power tools in their hand.
Insane meme. Insane picture to use to describe this, but I understand. It got the point across. He's about to get. People, welcome back to the channel for some more Warhammer 40k lore. I've been on a little break. So what's better to come back to for some more orc lore? Actually, not even more orc lore. This is the first orc related lore video I think I've seen. Maybe you guys can recommend me like maybe a deep dive in the orc lore or something, since orc is like my favorite faction. So I found my favorite guys. I'm with the green fellas. They're just a goofy group of lads from my understanding, and I'm about to check out this video by WesHammer. More WesHammer, man. What do the orcs think of every other faction? I think that would be quite hilarious. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. The original video will be top of the description. Let me know down in the comment section what I should react to next. Still brand new to this 40k stuff. At this point, I think I'll remain brand new still, even 50 reaction videos in, because there's so much. But yeah, green fellas.
And polling data that I just made up, there isn't a single 40k fan in existence that doesn't love the orcs.
Yeah.
If they say they don't, they're either lying or they hate fun. And if that's you,
W-Ork. Yeah, W-Orks.
40k as a franchise is how bleak, dark, and comically serious it often takes itself. But right when it's all starting to feel a little too depressing, the orcs come in like a giant green wrecking ball,
just have some fun.
Inject some much-needed humor.
Yeah.
And what's not to love?
This is what I got from them.
They're a bunch of cockney football hooligans. They don't care about taking territory. They're not trying to build some grand empire. They don't even have an agenda to push. The only thing
they just want to mess things up.
In pursuit of getting into ever more crazy scraps, they've spread to every corner of the galaxy in order to give all of the other factions a quote proper kicking. But what do the orcs think of?
Wait, the quote is proper kicking? What?
All those other factions. Do they think they're a bunch of weaklings and cowards, or do they have a lot of admiration for groups?
And they just be straight boxing the Tyranids.
They look at a species like, say, the Tau, who specialize in ranged warfare, as a bunch of cowards, or do they appreciate their taste in
Have you tried more DACA?
Thoughts on factions like the Necrons, the Eldar, the Tyranids, Chaos, or the Imperium?
Yeah, I
Which
wonder.
do they like fighting against
the most? Yeah, and which one do they struggle with, or like be like personal beef with that they just don't want to mess with?
Dare I say it? Have any of them actually managed to earn the orcs' respect?
Yeah, they're sad.
Gods in this universe like Khorne or the Emperor. Do they respect them as avatars of war, or think they're a bunch of wimps waiting to get pasted by Gork and Mork? We're gonna get into all that.
Gork and Mork? What the hell is that?
As I had nothing to do but research this one for the last week after catching COVID at a Magic the Gathering event. Which I know is an obvious thing to say now that I'm saying it out loud. It's like saying I caught the plague when I visited Nurgle's garden. What was I thinking? So yeah, sorry if I sound a little
didn't even think about that.
This one. I'm still kind of getting.
I might catch COVID in like July.
Before we dive headfirst into the Grimdark, a quick shout out to this video.
Or August, I should say.
This video is sponsored by Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus.
Woo, Tacticus.
A fast-paced and exciting turn-based tactical strategy game set in the Grimdark.
#ad.
The big news this month is that Tacticus is celebrating their 2-year anniversary. Not only do they have a ton of exclusive content lined up, including unique daily missions, offers, and rewards, but they're also introducing a brand new playable faction, the Exalted 9th Legion. The
Exalted 9th Legion
are finally being added to the game. Starting on August 4th, you'll be able to unlock the first Blood Angels champion, the Jump Pack Intercessor Sergeant Matt Teneo, by participating in the weekly events. And then, starting on August 21st, there's going to be a 7-day...
You know, no cap, I think I would actually play a 40k gacha game. 1,000,000% I will pull... Bro, I will go stupid on a gacha game for 40. I'm already in a gacha game addict. Bro, for 40k stuff, though, with cool little designs and characters and shit, easily. I go crazy.
For the Lord of Death himself, Mephiston, Chief Librarian of the Blood
Angels. Mephiston? This seems like a gacha game.
Powerful space marines to have ever lived. My favorite thing about Tacticus is just how much there is to do. There's a ton of different game modes, including guild raids, multiple faction-specific campaigns.
Nah, the gameplay don't look that good for me, man. Don't look that interesting. This ad almost worked on me, though.
Warhammer 40,000 champions to collect and battle with, from 16 playable factions, with new ones being added all of the time. With the 2-year anniversary event about to kick off, there's never been a better time to either come back to Tacticus or start playing for the first time. Click on my link in the description of this video to download and play the game for free today. A huge thank you to Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus for being such a long-time sponsor of this channel. I probably don't need to tell you this, but Warhammer 40k can get pretty dark. The Milky Way galaxy of the 41st millennium is one where hatred and loathing have been allowed to fester and spread unchecked through the minds and hearts of nearly every spacefaring species. When we try to measure how they all feel about each other, it's ultimately an exercise in splitting hairs over who they each hate the most. Right at the moment we're about to give up hope that anybody could be having a good time.
I need to see a list of the factions because I low-key want to see who they hate the most. This is the factions right here? Okay. Think of other factions. The Imperium of Men. Necrons, Tau Empire, Eldar, Tyranids, Space Marines. Okay. I think they hate and want to destroy and have fun destroying Imperium of Men. I'll go with Imperium. No, it's not because that section is the largest. No, come on, bro. Like, let us know.
In the grimdark future, we're introduced to everyone's favorite.
And I would assume who they hate to fight the most I would say Necrons or Tyranids. Okay, probably not the Tyranids because I feel like the Tyranids might be like the closest, maybe the closest to them. Maybe not really, but like in terms of like swarming, I guess. I don't know. Necrons, I would say they hate probably the most, and maybe the Tau. Maybe Tau or okay, the Chaos might be more so of them. So they might fuck with the they might fuck with them.
The Orks, a bunch of fighting obsessed
That's my guesses.
hooligans who rampage across the galaxy looking for a good scrap to get stuck in. If you know anything about 40k, I don't need to tell you just how amazing and hilarious they are, even if the people in universe absolutely hate them. They're like a hurricane of violence that carves a bloody path across the stars and kills.
Yeah, I heard playing them in the tabletop is actually pretty hilarious.
They seem to have a pretty good sense of humor about the whole thing, and their passion for fighting is pretty damn infectious. The funny thing about orcs is that all of the fighting they do isn't motivated by hatred for their enemies like most other species. In fact, hate is kind of a foreign emotion to the orcs.
Foreign emotion? Wait, really?
Hate something. Now, sure, there's things they don't like much or maybe find annoying, but they have a simple and elegant solution for that. They just fight those things.
They just fight those
things. Love
things.
To do, and thus what they assume everybody else in the universe loves as well. And speaking of fighting, it's pretty much the only thing that the orcs care about. You gotta remember that they were created 60 million years ago by the old ones as living weapons to fight against the Necron.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that. Yeah.
All the way down to their
just throw hands, bro.
Designed for combat.
Yeah, just throw hands.
It's just something they enjoy. It's everything to them. It is a biological.
Bro, that one has a bullet replaced as. Bro, what the fuck? Oh, this dude looks sick.
Need in much the same way that food or drink is for us. Because of this, the lens that the orcs view their galactic neighbors through is almost always framed by how good of a scrap they can give the boys. Now, what the orcs actually think about all of the other species they routinely go up against is admittedly one of those topics that isn't nearly as fleshed out as it could be. Insight into orc philosophy used to be pretty rare until we started getting all of the Mike Brooks orc novels that were written from their perspective. So Brutal Cunning, War Boss, and Big Daka, as well as a bunch of short stories and the Orc codexes, are going to serve as the primary sources for all of the information in this video. And because this script was made using sources almost exclusively written from their perspective, I'm gonna do honor to the Orcs and use all of their preferred names for different factions. Now, I'll explain them as we go, but real quick, humans are known as Humies, Space Marines are Beakies, all Eldar—
Beakies? What the fuck? Beakies? I need to know why the hell they're called Beakies.
Eldar are Scrawnies.
Eldar's a scrawn. Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Or Pansies in the older lore.
Okay, they call them pussies.
And their Dark Eldar variant is known as the
Spikies.
Fish heads or
fish boys.
Tyranids are bug eyes.
Okay, straightforward.
Necrons and pretty much all.
Let me guess. Something with light, something with aliens, maybe something with, I don't know, undead, something. Deadies.
Robots, for that matter, are known as Tin Heads, Tin Boys.
Tin Heads, Tin. Okay.
The Tins or the Tinnies.
The
Chaos
Tinnies?
Space Marines are the Chaos lads with the spikes.
Why? Wait, why is it Chaos? The Chaos faction is the only one that like kind of goes in depth with their names. The Chaos lads with spikes.
Are the Chaos lads with the spikes, and my personal favorite, demons are known
Chaos
as quote,
lads?
Chaos gribblies.
The
We're going to kick
Chaos
things off with their
gribblies.
thoughts on Humies, as by far there's more information about their feelings on them than any other faction. And by examining how they view our species, we get a good framework of Orky values that we can use to understand their relationship with Chaos and other Xenos.
Good old
You
Humies.
may be surprised to hear this, but the Orks are not particularly renowned for being especially deep thinkers. A fun fact, one of the things that starts to happen to them as they grow bigger from surviving a ton of battles is that their brains start growing as well, and also start thinking a whole bunch more, which is something that the Orks find particularly annoying. Since the vast majority
They
of them
find
will
it
get
annoying.
killed before they ever reach what we would consider smart, it shouldn't come as a surprise that they don't really take the time to observe all of the different nuances between
That's
different
actually
factions.
so fucking
The
funny.
Sisters of Battle, the
Oh, so bad.
Militarum, the Imperial Navy, it doesn't matter. They're all just Humies to the Orks. This extends to even factions that we as the audience would consider so radically different that they're almost a different species entirely. Like the cyborg tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus,
Yeah.
or even the friggin' Gene Stealer.
I thought they would call
The
them
former
to like
is
10
just the
heads.
Humie equivalent of mech boys to the Orks, and the latter is a bunch of funny looking Humies with too many arms. There is, of course, one major exception to this rule, and that's the Space Marine.
Yeah, the Space
Or
Marine.
the
yeah.
Beakies, as the Orks call them.
Yeah,
due to
why
the
are they
fact
called
that the Mark
Beakies?
VI Corvus pattern
Oh,
power
it has
armor
the beak.
looks kinda like a
Oh,
bird.
okay, I
The
see.
other most common variant of Space
Yeah, but
Marine
aren't-
armor has a faceplate that the
I'm about to say, but you call them beakies, but like there's so many other like, you know, helmet shapes, I guess. I don't know.
think looks like an orc when he's straining too hard at the drops, which is their worst way
The
to
drops,
Now, that
holy
obviously
shit.
doesn't make for a good nickname, so no matter what armor they're in, all Space Marines are Beakies. But we'll get into their thoughts on Space Marines later in this video. In multiple scenes throughout the Ork novels by Mike Brooks, and many codexes and campaign supplements from the last few decades, we get some direct quotes from the Orks that give us a lot more insight into their views here. From their perspective, Humies are kind of weird. They're fun to fight for reasons that we'll get into shortly, but culturally, they just do a lot of things that don't make any sense.
Yeah, that's why I assume that they would hate the Humies the most, probably.
Like, for example, one of the Orcs' favorite pastimes other than fighting is looting. And when they end up stealing a Humie vehicle, their excitement of getting their hands on some new wheels is almost always soured by what they find inside. You see, Humies have this really annoying habit of putting all of their flashy buttons and lights on the inside of their vehicles, which, as every good orc knows, flashy gubbins are meant to go on the outside to show off to all the
the show.
boys.
Oh,
Vehicles normally have
okay.
a good old-fashioned
Okay, I
set of wheels
see.
and tracks that they ride around on, which is something that the orcs respect. But unfortunately, this isn't always the case.
Not enough LEDs on that
When they
bitch,
fight
yeah.
against the
No,
Advent,
where the
for
RGBs
example,
at?
or the Red Robes, as they call them, their tanks float around like the vehicles of the Scrawnies, the Fishheads, the Tin Boys, and the Spikies. Now, some orcs believe this is why the Red Robes are so soft. If your ride isn't constantly being bombarded with bumps and shocks strong enough to compress your spine, you'll never be proper hard. Another thing that perplexes them about Humies and their trucks is that they all tend to drive on these big lines in the dirt called roads or bridges or some other stupid
That makes sense. They just go wherever the fuck they want. It's kind of like in open world games and shit. You just, you know.
Humie word. They don't understand why they don't
Go
just
every-
drive
go anywhere.
wherever they want like the orcs do. And likewise, they have this hilariously weird habit of putting wheels on the doors
Amazon?
inside of their ships and gargants, which, as every orc knows, you can't drive a door. But Humies just ain't logical. Humies also have this weird invention called an alarm system that's only purpose seems to be to get all of the Humies all riled up and scared before a fight. Why they would invent something like this is completely beyond them. Every self-respecting orc knows that before you get stuck in, you and the lads have to amp yourself up with some hooting, hollering,
Cooling,
and nice
oh,
loud
yeah,
laughter on top of
yeah.
your lungs, not purposely induce
Hell
feelings of
yeah.
fear and dread.
Yeah, that's for pussies. What the fuck? Weak ass niggas. Yeah, hell no.
Why they would make something like this, let alone put it on all of their buildings that contain all of their best loot, is something that continues to vex the orcs to this day. Humies also love wasting time building things that don't seem to have any practical application, like libraries, schools, hospitals, or even cathedrals to some bloke named the God Emperor. Beings of logic like the orcs
I mean, surely they respect the Emperor. The Emperor beat that ass, or before he became, you know, not able to move and
So
shit.
never build anything that wasn't specifically going to be used in a fight. Weapons, armor, and even some of the weird mech boy inventions all had a
Bro, did they tie an orc to the front of their car? Why the fuck would they do that? Not the homie.
purpose. But with Humies, 90% of what they made was practically
It's just a
worthless.
prank, bro.
At least when it came to their buildings, the Humies knew to make them real big. Now, that was something that the Orks respected. It made it more fun to knock them over. Now, although Humie cathedrals are a bit much for the Orks, all of the statues depicting the Emperor is something that they can at least wrap their minds around. Although they've never seen him, considering
Yeah,
that he's
the Emperor,
normally
yeah,
depicted
yeah.
as being 100 feet tall with a giant flaming sword, he's clearly either the boss of all the Humies or
Yeah,
God.
yeah, the
By way,
boss.
it would make sense to them that he told all of the smaller Humies to build all these things, and they have to listen to him because, again, he's the boss. Now, don't get it twisted. The god of the Humies in no way, shape, or form could stand up to true and proper gods like Gork and Mork.
Oh, Grook and Mork are other gods.
But so far as they can tell, if they ever manage to make it all the way to Terra and break into the Golden Throne, they're gonna get to fight a 100-foot tall Humie. So that's something that all of the Orks are looking forward
You're
to.
motivated
Now,
for
it makes
that. I
sense to
see.
the Orks that the Emperor is in charge, because based on all of the artwork they've seen, he's the biggest. This is how the Orks do things. The biggest Ork is the boss. Not just because he's stronger than all of the other boys, but because Orks get bigger the more fights they get in. So a proper big Ork has a whole bunch of experience and thus makes for a better leader. But aside from the Emperor and the Beakies, all of the other Humies are the same size. So they're always arguing with each other about who's in charge. This is something the boys just don't really understand, and thus Humie hierarchy of command is still an enigma to them. What they think they should do is just fight it all out and figure out who's the biggest and strongest and make them the boss. But you gotta remember that Humies just ain't logical. They do things that don't make sense, and oftentimes
But that boy is clean, sleek. Y'all peep the armor, bro? Ain't nothing on there, bro. He clean, buddy.
remember
Okay, it's a little something on there, but okay. For the most part, though, that boy is spotless.
logical.
I can
They
see
do
my
things that
reflection.
don't
No
make
cap.
sense, and oftentimes it's better just not to think about it.
God, that art
Also,
is
in their
fucking
defense,
tough.
Humies are pink or brown, fragile and soft, not tough and green like the boys. And as
Like
a
the
fact, pointed out in
boys.
brutal cunning, they die a lot easier as well. If all of the Humies started fighting each other, they'd all just be dead, and then there would be no Humies for the Orks to crump. They're too weak for that kind
Crump?
of thing. And since they clearly want to keep fighting the Orks, they assume that the Humies have had to make a few sacrifices in this department for the greater good of fighting. Now, Humies have a lot of faults, don't get it twisted. They do a lot of weird stuff that just doesn't make any sense, and they waste an enormous amount of time not fighting when they could spend time fighting. But even after all that, the Orks absolutely love them, even if they would never
They
admit it
love
out
them,
loud or
okay.
even understand their
All right,
affinity
so it's
for
not
them.
it's not
And
what I
that's for
thought.
two major reasons. One, even though they're not as good at fighting as the Orks, there's a lot of Humies. Now, we as the audience know that the Orks outnumber the Humies some 1,000 to 1, since they reproduce so quickly. But the Orks don't know this. From their
Oh,
perspective,
so they
it
just see
looks
it's
like
infinite.
Humies are everywhere. They can be found in every corner of the galaxy. And no matter how much time they spend fighting them, there's always more Humies. Every time you kill one, 10 more show up to take their place.
So that one makes me believe that they might like the Tyranids a lot. You know?
And honestly,
There's a
you
lot to
couldn't ask
kill.
for a better trait to have in an enemy. And two, although admittedly inferior to
Holy
Orks,
shit, that looks just comical. That actually just looks comical as fuck. What is that? No, is this real? There's no way this is actually like real canon art or whatever, bro. What?
technology, the tech that Humies make is easily a close second, especially when compared to the strange, esoteric machines utilized by other Xeno species. Humie weapons and armor are powerful, efficient, reliable, and most importantly, they look like what they're supposed to be. A gun looks like a gun. A sword looks like a sword. A tank looks like a tank. Now, compare that to all of the stuff used by the Spikies and the Scrawnies.
I feel
Their
that.
weapons
No,
are
yeah,
dainty
no,
little things that
yeah.
no self-respecting Ork would ever be caught dead wielding. Now, the only real issue that Orks have with Humie gear is that, quite frankly,
Fragile?
it's boring.
Yeah, okay,
Humies
boring.
are always unoriginal, and as a species, they fundamentally lack creativity. Their mech boys just don't have the pizzazz or flair of an Ork mech boy. And
Okay, I mean, I don't know, bro. Orcs, come on, man.
this leads to all of
You ain't
their
really
equipment
peeping the
looking
drip, though.
exactly the same. meaning that none of them can ever tell whose stuff belongs to who.
I see what you mean. There's no uniqueness.
Guns into a pile, each of them would be able to tell immediately which one was theirs, or at least which one they liked better. And then they could probably bash the true owner's teeth in and take it for themselves.
Okay, I mean, you could do that.
This isn't a deal breaker for the Orks when it comes to measuring up whether a species is a good enemy or not. In fact, Humi gear is their favorite thing to loot aside from looting gear from other Orks. Humi gear is like a blank canvas that the Orks can work their magic on and make it proper Orky. This normally takes the form of just gluing and
what the fuck is DACA? More DACA
to them to make them extra killy. For example, beaky power claws work pretty good.
Beaky power claws.
They look like a big Humi hand and don't have, big metal claws on them like a proper power claw. But that's nothing that can't be fixed with a bit of Orky ingenuity.
Fighting.
Okay,
over
let's
what?
get into what everybody actually
Fighting over what?
cares about. What do the Orks think of fighting against the Humies? How do they measure up when compared to every other species? Do the Orks love it or find them annoying? Are they the Orks' preferred enemy, or does that esteemed title go to a different faction?
I'm assuming they like fighting
Honestly,
them a lot.
fighting Humies is kind of a mixed bag for the Orks.
Oh,
They have
yeah,
some
'cause it
qualities that
depends.
make them a great
Because, like, I guess if you fight the beakies, you know what I'm saying? You fuck with the
proper
beakies.
enemy. Well, other things, not so much. One-on-one, a Humi doesn't even come close to an Ork. They're short, squishy, soft, and most of them are cowards, with, of course, the exception of old Baelai and the Beakies.
Baelai, bro. Oh my
Humies
god.
are also just not really built for fighting. The Ork's head is centered down low between their shoulders in the middle of their chest where they can keep it safe. But the Humies have their head on top of their shoulders.
I
just waiting
see.
for it to get knocked.
That's actually hilarious. There's actually a reason behind the design of the Orks. The head being like down here to kind of protect it.
off. That's why Humi dreadnoughts, knights, and titans look more like an orc.
Like an
than a
orc,
Humi.
yeah,
If they were
okay.
built like a Humi with their head on top of their shoulders, they would probably just wander around the battlefield all stupid-like until they got knocked over and killed. As I mentioned earlier in the video, Humi tech is not as good as orc tech, but the Orks will be the first to tell you that it's pretty damn efficient. It's good at killing, and at least most of their guns actually sound like proper DACA. Not that pew-pew
Proper
stuff that the
DACA.
fishheads, the tinnies, and the scrawnies use. Or the gross squishy things that the bug eyes fight with that aren't even actually weapons.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Humans
how do they feel
almost
about
always
that since
understand
the
proper
Tyranids don't
fighting
fight with no
etiquette,
damn, with
a
nothing, right?
rarity in the grimdark future. They tend to show up to the fight with a whole lot of boys for the Orks to crump. This is a kindness and a showing of respect that is not lost on the Orks. It's real neighborly of them, and the lads appreciate it.
Fire art.
Even-
That might be the
Even
thumbnail.
if the Orks don't really differentiate much between all of the different Humi clans, they can at least recognize that certain groups of Humis utilize different tactics, strategies, and war machines, and that's something that the Orks appreciate. Every Ork will tell you that variety is the spice of life when it comes to fighting, and the Humis, to their credit, do a pretty good job of always keeping things interesting. With them, you never really know what you're gonna get. Even if some cowardly groups of Humis like to use
Damn, they pulling
long-range
up through a
artillery
portal.
to paste all the boys before the fighting even really gets started. That, admittedly, is something they find annoying.
Not cool,
Humans, they
man.
recognize
Not
that this is
cool.
only
You gotta
one
fight us hand to hand.
tactic, and having a whole lot of different ways to conduct a fight is an important trait when measuring if someone's a good enemy or not.
The Tin Boys.
What about the Necrons, or the Tin Boys?
Yeah, I
as
feel
the
like they
Orks
hate
call
these
them?
niggas.
Are they as good of an enemy as the Humis? Well, they're certainly a lot tougher than Humis. Most of them can take a hit without even flinching. And the best part about the Tinnies is that when
Bro,
you're done
Necron
killing
art
them,
is so
they'll use their
tough.
reanimation protocols, stitch themselves back together, and stand
Oh yeah, they probably do like that. That they're yeah, they could. I didn't even think about that.
back
God damn
up.
it.
Then the boys can kill them all over again. Any Ork who's ever tried to do this with Humis will tell you that it's not nearly as fun. Now that being said, no enemy is truly perfect, and the Tin Boys do have a few flaws. Although their tenaciousness is greatly appreciated, fights against them can start to feel kinda samey after a while. It all starts to get a little bit dull. Most of the Tin Boys are mindless automatons that fight in complete silence. No war cries, no screams of pain, nothing to get the blood pumping.
Yeah, but the
Just
light
don't
is the
have
lights.
passion for fighting like Orks or even
Look at that little guy on the rocket, bruh. Look at him,
some
man.
Tinnies do. That being said, the Tinnies do have some pretty great tech to loot. Sure, their tanks might float around and their guns,
But they
may
got
not be
the
very
light,
loud,
the
but
flashy
they're
lights on
proper
everything.
killy and can unleash some pretty
Proper killy.
hilariously devastating effects on the battlefield. The The orcs will routinely do everything they can to try to loot
They
them.
dapping
The
up.
only problem is, most of the time, when they get into a fight with them, after they finish giving them a good kicking and the tin start to run for it, they and all of their equipment starts to fade out of existence, just completely disappearing and leaving no spoils for the boys, which is real sore loser behavior.
No
This
spoils for the
isn't exactly
boys.
widespread information, but there are some orcs that know the secret, that the best way to start looting tinny gear is not to fight them. It's to sneak into their tombs while they're all still asleep. This is what the Deathskulls orcs of Wa Zork did a little while ago. Once they got inside, they proceeded to start looting like crazy, but their rambunctious enthusiasm unfortunately ended up triggering the tomb's reanimation protocols, and the boys soon found themselves surrounded by thousands of canoptic constructs. If far from being intimidated, the boys were absolutely delighted. They started
They were
scavenging,
delighted.
exploring like crazy, and ended up using all of the Tin Boy gear to cobble together hordes
Oh
of
my
cyborgs and
god,
morganoids
that
and
shit looks
ever more
so
improbable
cool,
super
bro.
weapons, while also hijacking some Dolem gates to ferry in wave upon wave of reinforcements. By
Dolem
the time the
gates.
fighting was done and Overlord Thamtak the Magnificent awoke to take command of his legions, he opened his eyes to the sight of an entire mob of leering mech boys standing over his sarcophagus, evil gleams in their eyes and revving power tools in their hands.
Insane meme. Insane picture to use to describe this, but I understand. It got the point across. He's about to get fucked. The fish boys.
And speaking of valuable tech and those who utilize it, the Tau, or the Fish Boys, have some of the fanciest tech worth looting, and their stuff is a bit easier to figure out than the Tin Boy machines. The Orks will routinely mock the Fish Boy weapons for not looking nor sounding like proper Daka, but none will argue
Proper
their
Daka.
effectiveness. This often makes them preferred raiding targets for the Orks from the Bad Moon clan. For example, there was a massive colony seeding ship originally known as the Hope's Light in their fishy language that was captured by Megaboss Mokrog and turned into his looted flagship, now appropriately renamed.
You know, I'm actually really curious what the fuck Daka is. Hold on. Warhammer 40k Orks Daka. Daka is the Orcish word for firepower / guns. Oh. Good Daka means to shoot or fire, so referring to the act of firing a large volume of ammunition from their crude heavy weapons. Sound of machine guns going off. Daka, I guess. Baby, I guess that's the sound.
Named the Tau Killa. The boss has now been using this to wage unending war on the Kalshan Sept for about 200 years. So yeah, they've got some pretty good stuff to loot, but when it comes to fighting against the Fish Boys, it's ultimately a pretty frustrating affair for the Orks. You see, the thing about Fish Boys is they really don't like it when you hit him in the teeth with a choppa, so they'll do
With a
everything they
chop-
can to put as
They don't like it when you hit them in the teeth with the chopper.
much distance between themselves and the Orks as possible. This means that almost always, without fail, the boys will suffer unprecedented losses in the initial charge.
Not the
and you'll almost
boys.
never get the satisfaction of a good old-fashioned brawl with an enemy that actually hits you back when fighting against them. Now, you would think this would be something that would either cause them to change up their tactics or lose interest in fighting them. But it's not like that at all. They just accept that this is part of the territory with the fishies. Sure, it's a bit annoying, but the delay just makes it
They
all
just
the more
accept it.
satisfying
Yeah,
when
they
you
just
do
accept
finally
it.
Get your hands on the gits. Plus,
On
the
the
initial
gits.
losses just mean that there'll be more Fish Boys to crump for all the boys that do survive the charge. They might put too much focus in their Daka and negate the joy of variety in a fight, but at least the fishies seem enthusiastic and passionate about fighting in their own weird fishy way. The Scrawnies, on the other hand, well, let's get into it.
The scrawnies.
Scrawnies and Spikies, also known as the Eldari and the Drukari, are probably the most annoying of all enemies that the Orks routinely fight.
Oh, they actually
Somehow,
hated them.
managed to
Oh,
be
damn.
Even more cowardly than Humies, which in and of itself
It
is
scares
at
me.
least impressive. For some reason that the Orks just can't wrap their heads around, the Scrawnies seem to be more afraid of dying than any other species in the entire galaxy. Something about some pink god, it doesn't matter. They don't pay too much attention to any gods that aren't Gork or Mork, as the rest of
Gork
them
or
are
Mork is
just
the
a
god
bunch
they
of wimps
follows.
not worth thinking about. Besides, every Ork knows there's only two possible things that can happen when you die. Either nothing happens and then you're not bothered because there's nothing, or you go to the Great Green and meet Gork and Mork, who then subsequently reincarnate you back into the body of a new Ork, so you can go back to fighting and do it all again. Death isn't something that the Orks are afraid of. I mean, it's...
Oh, they don't even see it as dying at all, actually. They just see it as being reborn, like a constant fighting. Okay.
something to be avoided if it can be helped, but being afraid of it just ain't logical. Also, all of the scrawnies, be they pointy heads, clowns, or spikies, have this
I'm assuming you avoid it because you like the body that you're already fighting in.
real undeserved arrogance about
What if I
them
don't like
that
the body?
Orks find off-putting. It's like they approach the galaxy as though it should automatically behave the way they want it to, and then they get very miffed when it routinely doesn't. Just like how the Humies do things the Orks find baffling, it's much the same way with the scrawnies, but somehow even worse. At the end of the day, for as cowardly, weak, and oftentimes stupid as Humies is, they at least kinda sorta function in a vaguely similar manner to the Orks. They're just really bad at being Orks. But the scrawnies go one step further and do things that actively annoy them. They follow the same path as the tin boys and the fish heads, in that they make all of their trucks float around on grav lifts rather than being set on good old wheels and tracks. Also, if their guns do make any noise, it's all weird sounds that certainly aren't DACA.
Pew, pew, pew. Yeah, it's not DACA, it's pew, 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 pew.
Shoulder with every shot.
But there is no
Just
recoil.
like with other species, every orc that's ever fought against the scrawny
Nah, bruh. That design is fire as shit. I ain't gonna hold you. Damn, that shit look tough.
and lived long enough to have another go knows that looks can be deceiving.
Long
Just like
as
their
hair.
owners, scrawny guns are skinny, flimsy things that you could easily break over your knee without much effort. But they pack one hell of a punch. They may be weird and stupid looking, but at the end of the day, they're right killy. And from the
They're
Orcs'
right
perspective,
killy.
that's something you gotta respect. Now, that's mostly just in theory, because when the Orcs do actually get to fight against the scrawnies, and this goes doubly for the spikies, it's almost never as fun as it should be. They almost exclusively fight with hit-and-run style tactics, striking from the shadows, and only getting stuck in a fight they're 100% sure them and their mates can win without getting hit back. Now sure, if a line of boys and a line of scrawnies all charged at each other, both sides knew there was only one possible outcome, and it would involve the scrawnies getting a good kicking. But scrawnies didn't fight like orcs. They were always thinking about stuff. And the spiky ones had this annoying habit of laying traps to draw a couple of mobs off at a time and pick them off one by one, which was just rude. They didn't even give the rest of the boys a chance to get in on the scrap. Also, with the spikies in particular, they have this weird fascination with fighting things that can't or won't fight back. This behavior is anathema to the orcs. It's the equivalent of shooting at rocks, which, sure enough, could be fun for at least a little
Shoot
while,
rock.
but the point of a fight was the fight, where your blood was pumping and Gork and Mork were roaring in your ears. It's not fun unless the other git is looking to take your head off in return. Further, the spikies seem to take pleasure in not just killing and fighting, but actively hurting their enemies, even after the fight is done. Sometimes they would even try to capture their enemies, avoiding the fight altogether, just so they could hurt them. Now, torture is something that orcs just can't wrap their heads around.
Oh, they don't like that,
Waste
yeah.
time poking at your enemy like
When you
this,
go to another
when you
one.
could just move on to another
Yeah,
one
move on
and
to
keep
another one.
fighting.
Yeah,
No
keep on beating,
self-respecting
fighting
orc
some
would
shit.
ever engage in torture, not even to their worst enemy. The very idea makes them sick. Well, unless it was funny. Then they
Unless it was funny.
But that's different. So the scrawnies use tactics that aren't much fun to fight against, and since they're a dying species and all, there's not very many of them. Both things that don't rank highly when it comes to traits of a good enemy.
So the scrawnies and the spikies, they suck.
So is there
Understood.
anything redeeming about them at all? Well, kind of. At least to some orcs.
Oh no,
When
the
it comes to
weapons
loot,
being the
as I
weapon
mentioned
strength,
before,
right? Yeah, the
orcs
weapons.
find the aesthetics of scrawny weaponry to be pretty off.
But they're strong weapons,
but
though.
they do respect its power.
They do good
Likewise,
killies.
They're fascinated by scrawny armor, as even though it's no thicker than an orc's finger, it's capable of stopping a bullet or a choppa just as well as a hunk of steel
Or a chopper. Stopping that chopper.
as big as an orc's fist. It's way too small for the orcs to wear, though, and even if they could fit into it, they know they'd be the laughingstock of their mates. So if they do use it, they have to bash it into the shape of something that's at least not completely humiliating. The rest of the scrawny's gear, though, has a bunch of weird properties, like the ability to make portals or make things float that have no business floating. This loot is highly sought after by the mech boys, who will often pay a pretty hefty price in teeth for whatever boy manages to bring some in, so it at least has value in that aspect.
Oh, you out here going? Y'all are fond of trades. Y'all be trading and shit
Tyranids are probably
with other
about as
niggas.
far from scrawnies as you can get. Not only do they seem to love
Exactly,
fighting,
bruh.
but there's an endless variety of
As I'm saying, endless of them, so they probably fuck with the bug guys.
Not to mention the best part, there's a
The
lot
only
of
bad thing is you don't get no
reproduce
loot.
just as quickly, if not even faster than the orcs do.
You don't get no
when
loot,
the
but you
boys
kill 'em.
Find a planet currently being overrun by bug eyes, they know they're going to have more entertainment than they know what to do with. There's just a couple of small issues when it comes to fighting them. First is that whereas the scrawnies think way too much, the bug eyes don't really think of much of anything at all. They're like big squigs in that regard to the orcs. The only thing they're
Call them
concerned
big
with is getting their teeth
squids.
into their next meal. Now sure, sometimes they may look organized and like they're working together, but remember, looks can be deceiving. All the boys gotta do is pop one of the big brain looking bug eyes and the rest of them go absolutely nuts, which, in fairness, is always good for a laugh.
Oh shit, they already hip.
That there's just not much they can loot from them.
Yeah, okay,
All
so
the
they don't
bug
get no
eyes
loot.
weaponry
Yeah.
Isn't much use to an orc. They're all fleshy, rotting organs and not proper DACA. Now that being said, their teeth, scything talons,
Not proper DACA. God damn, I really want to hear just like a voice line of these fucking orcs just talking.
and chitinous armor plating can be fashioned into some pretty good gear with a little orky ingenuity. But most orcs prefer metal equipment, something the bug eyes just can't offer them. Now, of course, fighting is what truly matters. No orc would argue against this, but looting is important too. If fighting was a cake, then looting would be the frosting, and everyone knows that cakes always taste better with frosting. Unless it's cheesecake, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't think there's a single orc out there that doesn't like fighting against the bug eyes, but some orcs like it way more than all the rest. The snake bites, for example.
Oh,
a
the
more
snake
primitive orc
bites.
clan that
Wonder why they're
follows
called the
what
snake
they call
bites.
The old ways, enjoys the thrill of the hunt and routinely targets bug eyes and other big beasties as their preferred enemy type. There's actually one tribe of snakebite orcs in particular, known as the worm killers, that have taken
worm
this to an
killers.
entirely different level. You see, at
Who
one
just
point,
love doing
this
that
clan was
shit.
fighting against the bug eyes in some jungle on a backwater world where they discovered a big fleshy bug eye spore. They brought it back to their fleet and cracked it open, and out came hundreds of tiny baby bug eyes that
Oh,
quickly
shit.
ran off in every direction.
Oh
They would
shit.
soon find that
They
these
just
creatures
infested
grew
their
really
people.
quickly, and they were delighted to find their cruiser in a very short period completely overrun with them. No sooner had they bashed one in than another would appear out of a vent or a drain. Now eventually, the cruiser was completely infested and became the mirror image of the Tyranid-infested jungle from before. The only orcs that ended up surviving were these snakebites, who had become absolute experts in hunting these beasties. Eventually, they
Wait,
managed to
what?
kill all of them, and when they met up with a bunch of other orcs, they were
What?
absolutely covered from head to toe in Tyranid trophies, and had taken on the name Worm Killers. This
Worm
experience had been
killers,
so much
hell
fun to
yeah.
them that they decided to hunt down more
More
spore
and bigger-
pods, which they would then subsequently bring to new worlds, pop them open on their surface, and then leave
That is insane. They actually just grab them up, go to another world, pop that bitch open, and get the hunting.
for a few years, only to return to a planet completely overrun by
Oh
bug
no,
eyes.
you pop them and
It
let them
was
populate.
perfect. Not only were
Oh,
all of the
bro.
humans that lived on these worlds super mad,
Oh, and it was populated already. It was actually already populated with other niggas. So they'll like pop that, bro. Hey, bro, these niggas is insane. And this is just one faction. See, that's what I'm talking about. I need like a lore video for like orc specific. They got like different like mini factions within the orcs.
which the worm killers found really funny. But now they had a whole new planet of bug eyes to smash. Although exact numbers can't be confirmed, it's estimated that the worm killers have unleashed a bug eye Armageddon on dozens of worlds,
Armageddon,
ensuring
bro.
that they're never far away
Oh
from
my
a good
God.
fight.
The beakies,
Now, the Beakies
man.
are probably the most classic and iconic of all of the orcs' enemies.
Yeah, I feel
and
like they
it's a
fuck
huge
with the
reason
Beakies,
why they
man.
enjoy fighting against the Humies so much.
It's like it's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. They throw hands. So you know what I'm saying? They don't shoot from range for real. They read boxing, nigga. They got the only bad thing is they don't they don't have like a lot of variety, I guess, in armor. Everybody kind of looks the same. But they got good loots. You got good loots that you can use. You know what I'm saying? Good loots that you use, and their guns, that's that DACA, nigga. That's that big DACA with the chopper, feel me? You know?
Pretty much every major weakness that the Humies have when it comes to being a proper enemy, the
A
Beakies
proper.
have fixed. Humans by tradition are soft and cowardly, but Beakies are proper hard. In their
Proper
armor,
hard.
they're on par with an orc in terms of size, durability, and strength. And maybe not a war boss or a knob, but at least you're
A
run-of-the-mill
knob? The
boy.
fuck is that? A
They're
boss?
also far more aggressive than regular humies, and are not prone to streaks of cowardice. Honestly, the way the orcs see them, the beakies are more like them than any other living creature.
Oh, so the beakies is more like them. Oh, okay.
They're like kindred spirits, so to speak. The beakies understand that a fight is something you run towards and not away from. They're tough, strong, fast, and they'll keep fighting even after they've taken a good kicking.
God, that art looks so cool, bro.
In both armor and DACA.
Yeah, that DACA. They like that shit.
Guns, and their armor is much more well made than all of that other Humie stuff, making it some of the orcs' favorite equipment to loot. Now, it should come as no surprise that the orcs have a lot of respect for them, but they're not perfect. And first and foremost, there's not nearly enough of them. Somehow, they might even be rarer than the scrawnies, and much to the—
What? They're actually, are they? Than the Eldars? Really? Damn, I thought it was, I mean, I know it wasn't like, obviously like on the same level as all the other Humies and shit, but like,
the orcs' disappointment, most of the time
like
when they
Predator.
go to fight the Humies, there isn't even a single beaky to bash. Second, like I mentioned earlier in the video, the orcs don't really understand the concept of hate. Anything they find annoying, they'll just fight. But the beakies, on the other hand, seem to be entirely consumed by hatred for anything and everything that isn't a Humie. Hatred drips out of every one of their pores and motivates
so
every
angry
action they take and every decision they make. Now, sure, them being so hateful,
only like 1 million space marines, which ain't much compared to trillions of humans. I guess not only that, trillions of humans, but I guess the orcs don't know how much there are. But there's even what trillions times thousands of how many orcs that is.
It made them a bit more fun to fight, but some of the more thinky orcs actually kind of pity them in a way, which is another emotion the orcs aren't used to dealing with and they find it annoying. You see, beakies are so consumed by hatred and an underlying bitterness that they're robbed of the joy they should be experiencing in a fight. It's like, dude, why are you so angry? We are actively engaged in the most fun thing you can do.
Why are you so angry?
For the orcs to think that you need to take a chill pill is at least some kind of accomplishment.
Lads with the spikes.
Now, whereas the orcs don't really think much about the different chapters of Space Marines outside of the different color that they paint their armor, they do at least recognize that there's at least 2 different types of beakies, because the Chaos Lads with the spikes have a
Chaos Lads with the spikes
they pal around with. Now, all beakies are proper hard, don't get it twisted, but the Chaos beakies bring a lot more variety to the table when getting stuck in. Whether they be the blue weird boy beakies that cast all kinds of weird unnatural powers, the smelly green beakies that know how to take a punch,
smelly green beakies
that, if I'm just being honest, the orcs find pretty weird.
They find them weird.
That seem to love fighting almost as much as the orcs do. The major issue with them, though, is that the Chaos Lads with the spikes do a lot of weird stuff. Not only that, they often seem to have an agenda other than just fighting. In a lot of ways, they're more like regular Humies in that aspect and less like true beakies, at least as far as the orcs are concerned. When it comes to the Chaos Gods themselves, they're not really worth thinking about.
Khorne looks so clean, bro.
Obsessed with the orcs. He finds them deeply fascinating.
Oh, he's fascinated by the orcs, damn.
Would ever for a moment consider worshipping a puny Humie god. Gork and Mork were the only true gods any orc would ever associate.
I wonder what's up with this Gork and Mork. Like, are both of them similar? But I mean, I see the art. The only art that he uses are these two, and it's just red and blue. Are they just like twins, but they're like the same kind of gods? You know?
Now, all that being said, in their defense, the Chaos Boys are probably the kings of variety when it comes to fighting. You never really
like
know
twin
what to
gods.
expect with them,
I wish I could fight anything that annoys me. I mean, technically you can.
And thus their fights never get dull. When dealing with the warp and all of the strange, unnatural things that come out of it, things routinely get pretty weird to say the least. Especially when you're dealing with the Chaos Gribblies, or the demons as the Humies call them. They can show up seemingly out of thin air when you're stuck in a fight with the Chaos Lads, or even when you're out in the warp minding your own business. The orcs view the demonic incursions of Gribblies onto their ships as a good bit of sport, a fun way to pass the time on long journeys. And sure, Gribblies are fun enough to fight, certainly is a nice change of pace between mutinies, but no matter how brutal and vicious they are, they're ultimately just not that satisfying to kill. When the orcs crump them, they just
that are tough.
Disappearing as if they
crump
were made
is
of
kill.
smoke. Now, every orc knows that the best part of the fight is when you lop off the enemy git's head and all the blood goes gushing out. They never get that satisfying payoff with the gribblies, which ultimately just leaves them pretty pent up and frustrated. So most of the time, after they fight them, they just go back to fighting themselves. So the Chaos Lads and the Spikes have their place in the hierarchy of enemies, just like the gribblies and the rest of the species within the Milky Way. Unfortunately, though, there are some enemies that we know the orcs get stuck in with pretty frequently that have yet to be written about from their perspective, so we can only really speculate on how they feel about them. Now, hopefully when Games Workshop decides to flesh out the Leagues of Votin, or the Stunties as they used to be called in old lore,
the Stunties,
we'll also get a few stories from the orcs' perspective to see what they think about them. Likewise, the Custodians, who we can assume they would love.
Yeah, I love the Custodians. Yeah, but it's not that many. It's not that many.
Right at the top of the list for the orcs' preferred enemies. But as of the time of this recording, we haven't gotten a book that lets us see inside of their head while they're fighting against them.
No, I feel like they love fighting them, bro.
They correct in the future.
Maybe they were scared of them because they would just smoke them.
What do you
art
guys think?
Like sisters?
Who do you think would be the orcs' favorite enemy and why? Now, personally, I'm leaning towards regular old Humies, as they've got the most history with them outside the Necrons and the Eldar, but none of the boys today remember the war in heaven, and they don't keep written records. So, from the modern orcs' perspective, Humies, or more specifically the Beakies...
Yeah, I thought it'd be the Beakies too, from what Simon's like, but it's just that many of them.
If you like this video and you want to see more content like it, do me a favor and hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this with your friends. It helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate it. Also, sorry if I sound a little bit off in this video. I've got a wicked bad flu, but it was the day I was supposed to record, so we're just making our way through it. Also, maybe check out the other videos I've got linked here in the end screen. I just recently made one on all of the differences between Psykers and Sorcerers, as most people incorrectly assume that they're the same thing. And I also made a how-to guide on how to properly summon a demon
How to summon a demon? What the fuck?
At least in 40k. I had to dive into some pretty obscure source material for those two, so they're worth checking out if you like chaos lore. Anyways, as always,
video, man. Let me know in the comment section what I should check out next with the 40k lore, man. Maybe let's get into more specifics, I think, a little bit.